In back-to-back games against the 76ers, Tyrese Haliburton put on an absolute clinic, scoring 58 points, assisting on 32 shots, knocking down 10 threes, all while not turning the ball over a single time. That last number is out of this world ridiculous. Through 10 games on the season, he's leading the NBA at 12.5 assists a game with just over 2 turnovers. That's a ratio of about 6 assists for every 1 loss of possession, a mark that not even Chris Paul has ever reached. In those 2 matchups with Philly, we saw the entire arsenal and how he makes his team as a whole so impossible to slow down. If you turn on a Pacers game in the 4th quarter, you're likely to see some obscene point total. In 11 games, they've scored under 120 just twice and have reached heights of up to 143 or 152, both of which ended in regulation. They're averaging almost 127 points a game, the most of any team in NBA history, and that's spearheaded by Haliburton's ability to push the pace. He's always looking for every chance he can get to initiate the fast break, where he seemingly makes the right decision every single time. In a 3-on-1 situation, he stares down a streaking teammate on his left before hitting Toppin in stride on his right for some easy offense. He loves using his eyes as a weapon to manipulate the defense like this. When he gets the ball, Tyrese Maxey is playing in between Bruce Brown and Obi Toppin. By staring down the middle of the floor, Maxey freezes because he has no idea where the pass is going. And by the time Haliburton slings a one-handed bullet to the baseline, it's too late to react. He's not afraid to get creative or take risks in the open floor. If he thinks there's an opportunity to hit a teammate for high-quality offense, he's attempting to make it happen. Like here, where he waits to see if Isaiah Jackson's gonna slip behind Beverly without him noticing and proactively throws a lob that leads to a pair of free throws. And of course, on a play like this, where the defense does a good job of getting back and taking away any cutters, he's comfortable getting into his own offense, faking a handoff so that he can clear some space for a triple. It's not just after rebounds or forced turnovers either. When I say playing with tempo, I mean every single opportunity you can think of. After a made basket, you can see Haliburton ready to inbound the ball, and the broadcast decides to give us a cinematic angle of Maxey running down the floor, only to cut back to the game with a basketball flying in from the heavens to set up Jackson with a wide open lay. This happens more often than you'd think. Embiid gets himself a bucket in isolation and jogs his way back to the defensive end as the broadcast gives us a closer look. And somehow when it gets back to action, Haliburton's already passed Joel on a drive with 21 seconds on the shot clock, and he's scoring a layup while some of his teammates haven't even crossed half court yet. The reason they zoom in on players after scoring is they like to see their reactions, get some cool cinematic shots, but against the Pacers, they just end up zooming in on guys frantically trying to set up the defense, because here he comes, kicking it out to Miles Turner for an open 3 from the corner. Some of these are just ridiculously stupid. They've got a kid holding up his flag, repping Philly, and in that short time the Pacers got the ball down the floor and Buddy Hield has already released a 3-pointer from the left corner. There's no way of even knowing how the sequence unfolded, but what I can tell you is that Haliburton was indeed credited with an assist. When playing the point, he's able to quickly process exactly what the defense is going to do and knows how to counter. He sees that Embiid is out near the perimeter instead of down low and immediately kicks it ahead to Toppin, who has a free lane to the basket for a ridiculous reverse dunk. Sometimes it can be something really simple, but it's about consistently making the right play. He recognizes that the defense is scrambling to find the right matchups and just gives it up to Buddy Hield to initiate the offense instead, because he's left with a ton of room to step into a 3. Kick-aheads are a go-to, but he'll also hunt for the inverse, dropping it back to a trailing Miles Turner for a wide-open top-of-the-key triple. And just like in the open floor, he'll call his own number when there's no quick pass available. As he hesitates and explodes downhill with a crossover, notice how Joel's again nowhere near a spot to rotate down to the rim, and that leaves Haliburton with an easy 2. On this next one, you're going to see that Joel actually is in position to protect the rim. So this time, Miles Turner is going to set a back screen on his own man, meaning that when Tyrese again beats Batum off the dribble, there's no one left to prevent a layup. This time it's a more traditional setup, with Turner coming to set a high ball screen, but Haliburton rejects it and drives into open space on the right, effectively collapsing the defense so that he can find Brown on a cut, and that's 2 free throws. These high pick and rolls early in the offense have become a staple in Indiana's attack. Tyrese hasn't even crossed half court yet when they get into this one, and when he again rejects it, that forces Embiid to the ball, opening up a tight window for him to shovel it to Turner as he creates yet another great shot at the basket. Because he often looks to reject these screens and get downhill, he can leverage that threat by going in and out and hesitating as he actually uses it, drawing 2 to the ball, which leaves Obi Toppin wide open on a slip. The high pick and roll is also where Haliburton does a large chunk of his scoring in the half court. The first threat is his shooting. If he's met with drop coverage, he'll just step into threes off the bounce. Here's one where he comes off a screen with a bit of speed, looking to drive, but as soon as he recognizes that Joel's dropping back, he instead steps back to the three-point line with nobody there to contest. He's got these crafty methods for creating space. Here's one where he rejects the screen, but a second defender's right there to help, so he throws a pass fake to the wing to move that guy away, and now he's got enough room to comfortably pull the trigger. This time he uses the screen, but Paul Reed comes up to the level, so he pulls back and uses Jalen Smith's roll to the basket as a sort of second screen. Just like that, he's setting up for another triple. Since 2022, Haliburton's hit about 39.5% of his off-the-dribble threes, which, when taking into consideration his shot diet, is a pretty ridiculous mark, and allows him to consistently punish softer coverages. It isn't just the 3 that defenses have to worry about either, because he's also comfortable getting to his own shot in the mid-range. To start this season, it looks like he's been going to the in-between game more and more, and I think it's important because it just adds another layer to his attack and another way to pressure defenses, like here where he uses the mid-range threat as a tool to free up Miles Turner on a pop, and the big man is left with a warm-up jumper. As a result of Haliburton's world-class shooting, when he comes off of screens, more times than not bigs are forced to play in a more aggressive coverage. The problem then becomes how you deal with his passing, now that you're conceding an advantage. This time he creates a 3-on-2 by getting it to Turner in the short roll, and that leads to a layup. Earlier in that game, there was a real similar play, with 2 jumping out at Haliburton, except this time Joel rotates early from the weak side so that the short roll isn't left open. No problem, because he'll just skip an absolute dot across the court right into the hands of a shooter for 3. And what about when the defense seemingly does everything right? 2 on Haliburton, a weak side defender coming over to meet the roll, and no easily accessible skip pass. Well, that's when he'll again take matters into his own hands, getting by Joel in space to pull Harris further away from the rim, opening up a lob to the cutting Obi Toppin. Throughout this video, all I've talked about is the speed of Haliburton's offense and how quickly he can break down a defense, but when he needs to be patient, he can do that as well. He again draws 2 off a screen, but there's not really a pass to make, so he's going to use his live dribble to create one, getting to the baseline and staring down Bruce so that Batum moves away from Turner, and that leads to a foul. Here's one where Philly went back to their deep drop, and I think Tyrese has some room to step into a jumper, but he doesn't take it, instead snaking the pick and roll and attacking that open space. When Melton helps at the nail, he uses his length to squeeze through the gap, and sets up a 1960s looking running hook. Dude's just having fun out there. Another thing that I think is important to note is that you'll rarely ever find Haliburton forcing offense when it isn't there. The initial high ball screen doesn't lead to anything, but instead of taking a tough shot or trying to reset the possession, he just flows right into a 2-man game in the middle and gets to the paint for an easy floater. While a large bulk of their scoring does come from Haliburton's use of ball screens, reducing Indiana's half-court offense to a bunch of pick and rolls doesn't do them any justice. Rick Carlisle and his staff have implemented some of the most creative, innovative, and effective X's and O's in the NBA. One staple is their use of ghost screens, which basically means that another shooter is going to act as if he's setting a ball screen, only to slip right behind the defense into a spot on the perimeter. This time Haliburton pauses as if looking to make the pass, which buckles his defender and leaves him with room to step into a jumper. They'll make these ghost screens even tougher to defend by throwing them straight into second actions, like here where Haliburton draws two to the ball while Nesmith slides to the wing, and there's no chance of recovering because Jalen Smith came up to set a flare. Joel is forced to jump out to the shooter, leaving Smith open on a roll, and it all started from one simple concept. Here's another example. Buddy Hield is the guy ghosting to the opposite wing, except this time it's to set up that high pick and roll. Haliburton gets to the paint where he draws a contest from Paul Reed before leaving it to Turner at the very last moment. The actions that the Pacers run almost always end in a good shot, but there are times where things crumble or just don't work for whatever reason, like here where Haliburton fumbles the ball and resets with no apparent advantage. We talk all the time about how tough shot makers can break free from the offense and get their team a quality possession out of thin air, but that doesn't get talked about as much with elite tight window passers. If something goes wrong, just cut and he'll find you. Some of the passes he's comfortable attempting, let alone connecting on, are absurd. And remember, the success rate on these dimes is sky high because the guy never turns it over. He can also get to his own shot one-on-one pretty consistently, which gives them another release valve. This time early in the offense, he's going to throw a double crossover straight into an aggressive step back, and just look at how much space he was able to create. That's some pretty nasty stuff. This time it's late in the shot clock, starting his attack with 6 seconds left, and he has no trouble at all beating Harris off the dribble. Like clockwork, he's going to collapse the paint and find a teammate for some quality offense. In addition to the constant running, the Pacers are currently recording 1.07 points per half-court possession, landing 5th in the NBA, and most of that comes as a result of Haliburton. He's second in the league at about 94 touches a game, meaning that he almost always has the ball. And it works because he's a multifaceted scoring threat, an elite playmaker, and doesn't make errors. When you have the rock in one guy's hands for a majority of the game, and said guy never turns it over, it'll reflect pretty well on the team level, as they are just 28th in turnovers. There's a pretty interesting wrinkle to take into consideration though. He's also really good away from the ball. Over the last 3 seasons, he's made about 42% of his threes off the catch, which of course means that he's going to demand attention at all times, and he knows exactly how to capitalize. At the end of the shot clock, it gets swung over to him at the top of the key, and his very first instinct is to make an extra pass to the left, but he sees that Maxey hasn't rotated, so he'd still be able to close out. With 2 defenders jumping out to him, he's able to quickly process that the right decision is actually sending the ball right back to Turner, and that leads to an open 3. He will make the right extra pass quite literally every single time. Here's one where Buddy Hield pulls multiple defenders to the paint and kicks it out to him, and while most guys would quickly move it to the next guy over, he sees the floor differently. Batum's actually closing out to McConnell, not Nesmith, so Tyrese instead skips it to the top of the key with nobody left to cover. And here it is once again, spotting up on the wing and receiving a kickout, except this time when he goes to make the extra feed, Beverly aggressively plays that lane. So he decides to fake the pass, then drives into open space in the middle where he can finish with some nice craft at the basket. Attacking closeouts is an incredible way to keep the defense in rotation, and Haliburton's a quick enough decision maker to not just beat his man off the dribble, but make the right reads after applying that downhill pressure. every single time. When it all comes together, the shooting, the playmaking, the tempo, the ability to play away from the ball, you're left with this well-rounded hybrid of an offensive engine whose efficiency directly impacts the team. Right now, the Pacers are scoring 122.5 points every 100 possessions, which isn't just first in the current season, but would be the highest mark any team has ever recorded if they were to sustain it. If we look at just the 337 minutes that they've played with Haliburton on the floor, the number jumps up to nearly 128. So we're not just talking elite, but all-time GOAT type of offensive heights as a team. Some of the guys around Tyrese deserve their flowers, as does the coaching staff, but he's the engine that makes everything run, both literally and figuratively, and he's having himself one of the most impressive offensive seasons we've seen in recent years. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Haliburton. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.